Today's review is sponsored by Final Girl Insurance. You're in a horror movie, you're probably gonna die, might as well leave a little something for the survivors. Just call 1-800-GET-DEAD. That's 1-800-GET-DEAD. Final Girl Insurance, for those who are almost the final girl.
Watch it, Alan, I'm shooting.
Fade to black. If you're a regular on my channel, you've heard me talk about the three different categories of slasher movies. The ones that focus mostly on the kills, the ones that focus mostly on story and atmosphere, and the ones that focus on story, atmosphere, and kills. Today we're looking at the middle category. In Fade to Black, we follow a young man named Eric Binford. That's one of those slasher villain names that strikes fear into the hearts of horror fans. Freddy Krueger, Michael Myers, Jason Voorhees, Eric Binford. He's also proud to present Tim the Toolman Taylor.
Of course, you want to be sure the trigger switch is not locked in the on position.
Any idiot knows that.
Eric has two obsessions in his life: movies and Marilyn Monroe. He's a pretty lonely guy, constantly getting verbally abused by his aunt, browbeaten by his fellow employees, just looked down upon by everybody. But things start looking up when he encounters a Marilyn Monroe lookalike, who also happens to be named Marilyn. Wow, what a coincidence.
I'm sorry. I just wanted to meet you. I'm a great admirer.
Oh, Shantae. I'm Marilyn Monroe.
What are you doing?
But if you're a horror fan and you've seen movies like May and Carrie, you know where this is gonna go. Eric eventually snaps and goes on a killing spree. The difference between his killing spree and killing sprees in other slasher movies is that Eric mixes his obsession for movies with his murders. I gotta give a shout out once again to my friend Randy. He's the one who brought this flick to my attention. This is a movie buff's horror movie. You get so many references, not only to classic horror movies, but classic film in general.
Settle this, will you? What was the fat man's name in the Maltese Falcon?
That's easy.
Okay, what is it? What do you give me? Hey, come on, man, we ain't got all day. What was it?
It's Casper Gutman.
Whenever Eric kills somebody, he dresses up as a classic movie character. The kills aren't the bloodiest. There is a splash of red here and there, but that's not what makes them fun. What makes them fun is seeing what character Eric is going to dress as and how he's going to use that in the murder. It's important to note that this is a horror movie about a guy who's obsessed with movies killing people, and making references to other movies while killing people. When most people talk about referential horror movies, they usually talk about Scream. I love Scream. I grew up with Scream. My friend Keith is a huge Scream fan. We've watched the franchise many times.
Jesus Christ, you don't know the rules?
Have an aneurysm, why don't you?
There are certain rules that one must abide by in order to successfully survive a horror movie.
But Scream has always been known as the self-aware horror movie, the meta horror movie. Hey, look at all these references to other movies.
Name the killer in Friday the 13th.
Jason! Jason!
I'm sorry. That's the wrong answer.
Listen, it was Jason. I saw that movie 20 goddamn times!
Then you should know Jason's mother, Mrs. Voorhees, was the original killer. Jason didn't show up until the sequel.
I don't want to take anything away from Scream. I love Scream. It's a very important entry in the horror genre. But Fade to Black came out in 1980. And Fade to Black did it first. Whereas Scream did the whole reference thing with slasher movies like Halloween, Friday the 13th, and Nightmare on Elm Street, Fade to Black did it with classic movies like Dracula, The Mummy, and Kiss of Death. Not enough people talk about Fade to Black, and it deserves a lot more credit than it gets. It's the same thing with Halloween and Black Christmas. Halloween always gets credit for being the first slasher movie, but Black Christmas came out first. And giallo movies came out before that, but that's for another time.
Everybody out!
Now getting into Eric Binford, what I like about Fade to Black is the same thing that I like about Maniac and Silent Night Deadly Night. The slasher is the main character. Looking at these three flicks, if you made a few changes here and there, they could have been psychological thrillers. Every slasher movie out there, no matter how gory or cheaply made, has a psychological thriller buried somewhere underneath. It's buried very deep for some of them. And a lot of psychological thrillers, I won't say all of them, but a good amount, have a slasher movie sprinkled here and there.
Start dancing, cowboy.
Hey, come on, man. Wait, what are you doing?
Come on, Richie, he's crazy! Come on!
Hey, wait.
Richie, come on!
What are you doing?
Come on,
Nuts, man.
Going back to Eric, he has this Roddy McDowall look to him. Us movie fans can connect with him because he's a movie fan. He just takes his love for movies to an unhealthy extreme. Maybe I shouldn't talk.
Come on, sweetheart. We got work to do.
This is first and foremost a fun horror movie. It has that camp that you want from 80s horror movies, with a hint of 70s horror. 1980 was that transition year. You could still get a taste of 70s horror, while the 80s was taking hold. It's the best of both decades. You get that in every transition year, 1930, 1940, 1950, 1960, and so on, when it's transitioning from one decade to the other, and you get a taste of both decades in those movies. Plus, it's fun to see all the movie references. Not just the costumes that Eric wears, but the posters you see in the background, and Eric constantly spewing movie facts.
You didn't know what Adolf Hitler's favorite movie was. Broadway Melody, I bet you didn't know that. And what about Cry of Battle and War is Hell? Where were they playing, huh? At the Texas Theater where they caught Oswald the day he shot Kennedy. I bet you didn't know that.
It adds an element of humor to the flick. Again, just like Scream.
Police are always off track with this shit. If they watch Prom Night, they'd save time. There's a formula to it. A very simple formula. Everybody's a suspect.
But it still has that creepiness, mainly from Eric's obsession with Marilyn Monroe. He meets the Marilyn Monroe lookalike and instantly becomes obsessed with her. He tries to get a date with her. She unintentionally stands him up, and that's the catalyst for Eric's final descent into madness. You know he's going to appear in this woman's life again, and it's going to end in tragedy. The only problem with Fade to Black is the B-plot. While Eric is going around murdering people movie style, you have a doctor and a detective trying to find the killer. These scenes grind the movie to a halt.
Also, the newspapers think there is a link between the Dracula murder and this cowboy caper.
One of the victims was a stock boy in an advertising firm, the other's a hooker.
They're trying to be interesting, but they're not. They're trying to add some extra humor, but it doesn't work. As soon as Dr. Dull appears on the screen, you check out. That's a problem that a lot of slasher movies can have. I'm a slasher fan. I love slasher movies. But a lot of slasher movies can fall into this trap. Everything around the killer and the kills is not interesting.
That's what I'm talking about. How about the teenager who stabbed his friend 22 times and said it wasn't like on television? The knife only went in a little ways.
Luckily for us, for 90% of the movie, we're following Eric Binford, the killer that strikes fear into the hearts of Tool-time TV show hosts. So even though a lot of what's happening around the killer is not interesting, we're mostly following the killer. So there's plenty interesting stuff in the movie. For me, Fade to Black is a slasher movie that many movie fans can enjoy. There are people out there who do not like slasher flicks. I think they'll like Fade to Black. There are movie fans out there who aren't really into horror movies. I think they'll like this one as well. Because this is sort of a love letter to classic film, I think many film fans can enjoy this. And with that, let's fade into the Grindhouse rankings. Sorry. We've got a body count of 6. The kills consist of, but are not limited to, Dracula tributes, mummy tributes, and kiss of death tributes. These are not the bloodiest kills, but they work because of the film references attached to them. That's what makes them fun. Eric Binford is a good killer. His obsession with movies is what makes him interesting, and his obsession with Marilyn Monroe is what makes him creepy. There's an element of fun to this flick. It helps to make it appealing for those outside the horror genre. I like that it's a transition horror movie. We get an 80s horror movie with a hint of 70s horror. Sadly, all the scenes with the police trying to solve the case aren't that interesting. You just want to get back to Eric. I'm giving this a 3.8 out of 5. Well worth a watch for horror fans, and good for a movie night with friends that aren't as into horror. As always, I want to thank everyone for watching and supporting my channel. If you're new here, please subscribe and give this video a thumbs up if you like what I do here, or give it a thumbs down if you don't like what I do here. Leave a comment down below. Let me know a horror movie that you think is good for non-horror fans. This is the Maniac, here to remind you that the Grindhouse will never die.
True, how true.
Al, I was gonna get to that.
Sorry, I couldn't help myself.